Namaskar. Good morning and a hearty welcome to everybody. Thank you once again, Matajis, for this beautifully sung Nirvana Shatkam. We will see that it fits today's part of the talk even more than it did the first. So let me once again read out the translation. As you listen to the words, this time I'd like you to close your eyes, pay full attention to what you hear, and try to imagine that you are actually what this great hymn says we are. Not the superimpositions of the body, sense organs, mind, or ego, and all that is related to that limited, changeful, false personality, but the pure Atman, that is the limitless, changeless, eternal reality that underlies them all. Om. I am neither mind, intelligence, ego, nor thought, neither the ears, nor the tongue, nor the senses of smell and sight, neither space nor earth, nor fire nor air. I am the soul of awareness and bliss. I am Shiva, I am Shiva. I am neither the prana nor the 5 vital airs, neither the 7 elements of the body nor its 5 sheaths, nor tongue, nor hands, nor feet, nor other organs of action. I am the soul of awareness and bliss. I am Shiva, I am Shiva. Neither loathing nor liking, greed nor delusion have I. Nothing of pride or envy, of dharma or purpose, of desire or liberation. I am the soul of awareness and bliss. I am Shiva, I am Shiva. Nothing of virtue and vice, or pleasure and pain do I know, of mantra or sacred place, of Vedas or sacrifice. Neither am I the eater, the food, nor the act of eating. I am the soul of awareness and bliss. I am Shiva, I am Shiva. Death or fear I have none, nor any distinction of caste. Neither father nor mother, nor even a birth have I. Neither friend nor comrade, neither guru nor disciple. I am the soul of awareness and bliss. I am Shiva, I am Shiva. I have no form or fancy, the all-pervading am I. Everywhere I exist, and yet beyond the senses. Neither salvation am I, nor anything to be known. I am the soul of awareness and bliss. I am Shiva, I am Shiva. I am the soul of awareness and bliss. I am Shiva, I am Shiva. So today we continue our discussion of the twofold Vedantic method by which a spiritual seeker discovers the truth about oneself. In the last retreat, we dealt with the first part called Adhyaropa or superimposition. We learned how, because of ignorance, one thing is perceived as another, and the properties of the one are attributed to the other. Now we will take up the second part called apavada or negation. We will learn how, with the help of discernment, the falsely superimposed attributes are eliminated and the true nature of the thing discovered. We were talking about the gross, subtle, and causal aspects of the individualized soul, the 3 bodies and the 5 sheaths. All of them are modifications of matter. They are unreal in themselves. That is to say, they don't possess absolute reality. They appear to be real because the self, which is real, is their substratum, their underlying basis. Just as the mirage appears to be real because the desert, which is real, is its substratum. The point is, without an underlying basis that is real, there can be no appearance. But appearance is not reality. So these bodies and sheaths are not real coverings of the self, which is infinite and eternal. They only look like that when the true knowledge of the self is forgotten. When we stop identifying ourselves with these modifications of ignorance or maya, then the full glory of the self, unobstructed by any of them, is revealed to us. And this, just this, is the aim of Vedanta, to help us recover our forgotten identity. Our everyday life is lived almost wholly on the physical and mental levels. Our experiences are confined to objects and ideas. Our sense of self is limited by factors like the body, sense organs, mind, and ego. These virtually make up our average existence, and we doubt the reality of anything beyond. But as long as we equate ourselves with these things, we can't perceive anything subtler, anything higher or deeper. In our daily lives, we only deal with shadows. It is these shadows that Vedanta asks us to negate. Vedanta says the individualization of the self is not real. It's an illusion created by ignorance. The unattached self cannot be related to the objective world except through delusion. And since the very idea of individualization is a product of delusion, it ceases to exist when the delusion is destroyed by the true knowledge of the self. Because of ignorance, a rope appears to be a snake, and it continues to be perceived as such so long as the ignorance lasts. But when the true nature of the rope is seen, the idea of the snake disappears. When ignorance is destroyed by right knowledge, all notions of the self's individualization cease to exist. Just as the dream ego, functioning in sleep, vanishes when the dreamer awakes. The self is the only existing reality. It can't be, by any means, become individualized. Because the idea of individuality doesn't exist from the standpoint of the self. There can't be any real connection between the self and individuality, just as there can't be any real point of contact between the desert and the mirage. The philosophers say it beautifully. The illusory water of a mirage cannot wet a single grain of sand in the desert. So what happens when the threefold body, the fivefold sheath, and all objects and ideas are negated as unreal? It may be argued that when the process of negation is carried to its logical conclusion, one finds an utter absence of everything, that what remains is a void. So the ultimate reality is a void or non-existence. But Vedantic logic goes further. Every act of negation leaves behind a positive residuum. It leaves behind a remainder. When the snake is negated, the rope remains. And when the rope is negated, something else remains. After all the changing superimpositions have been removed, what remains is not void, but pure being, existence itself. When all objects and ideas have disappeared, what stands in their place is not emptiness, but pure consciousness, the perceiver of the void or emptiness. And that is the real self. As a matter of fact, Vedanta holds that only after this kind of negation can one realize the pure, attributeless self, that is, the witness of all the modifications of relativity. And this is important, witness not only of those modifications, but also of their absence. That is why it is sometimes called contentless consciousness or contentless awareness, in which both subject and object merge and disappear. It can't be void for one final reason. A person emerging from the experience of the self is full of knowledge and wisdom, peace and blessedness, love and compassion. So this self is the individualized soul's real essence. When the soul discovers this, it discards all limitations and realizes its true nature. Just as a river entering the ocean gives up name and form and finds its real source and ultimate goal. Now, what is the process by which a seeker recovers his or her real identity? According to Vedanta, the true nature of the self is discovered through the method of negation, a method in which the seeker systematically rejects all phenomena as illusory until one arrives at self-knowledge. Vedanta says, just as a snake seen in the rope is in the end, that is to say, after proper investigation, as it is found to be nothing but the rope, in the same way, the unreal individuality that is superimposed upon the real self is also realized in the end to be nothing but the self. Now, before proceeding any further, we must be clear about what exactly negation means. Otherwise, there will be much unnecessary misunderstanding. It is not the relative reality of our personality that is denied. I repeat, it is not the relative reality of our personality that is denied. That reality, based on the self, does surely exist, but only for the time being. What is actually negated is the wrong idea springing from ignorance that this personality of name and form is absolutely real, real in itself, independent of the self. Now we can move on to a detailed description of the method of negation. There are two great Vedic statements through the contemplation of which the mind is led from the false personality of name and form to the self that underlies them. That thou art and I am Brahman. Tat Tvamasi and Aham Brahmasmi. Both these statements point to the same fact, that is, the ultimate and essential oneness of the human being, or to be precise, any living being. The ultimate and essential oneness of a living being, or the individual soul, and God, the universal soul. The reality behind them both being Brahman, or pure consciousness. Let's try to understand the meaning of the first statement, that thou art. The word that has two meanings, a direct and an implied. Directly, that stands for the conditioned Brahman, Saguna Brahman, who is associated with the universe as its creator, preserver, and destroyer, and who is endowed with omniscience, omnipotence, lordship, and similar attributes, together with pure consciousness. This is important. God plus pure consciousness, which underlies both the conditioned Brahman and the universe. That is to say, the direct meaning of the word that is the conditioned Brahman, Brahman with attributes, the universal soul or God, but the implied meaning of that is pure consciousness unassociated with any limiting factor of Maya, and which is the substratum of both God and the universe. Likewise, the word thou also has two meanings, a direct and an implied. Directly, thou stands for the individualized soul associated with an individual body, characterized by such limitations as birth and death, hunger and thirst, pain and pleasure, and endowed with limited knowledge, limited power, limited freedom, and other similar traits, together with pure consciousness again, which underlies all this. That is to say, the direct meaning of the word thou is the individual soul or the human being. But the implied meaning of thou is pure consciousness, again, unassociated with any limiting factor of Maya, and which is also the substratum of the individual soul. The word art in the statement conveys the idea of the identity of that and thou. So now, what do we do when the direct meaning of a statement does not agree with actual fact? Then we have to interpret the statement in terms of its implied meaning. Here it is obvious that that and thou are characterized by contradictory attributes. They can't be identical from the standpoint of direct meaning, that is to say, in a literal sense. God differs from a human being as the sun from a firefly, the ocean from a glass of water, or a mountain from a mustard seed. Yet, their identity is a fact realized through the direct and immediate experience of the rishis. So, this identity is explained from the standpoint of implied meaning. Vedanta philosophers reason that the contrasting attributes which distinguish God and a human being are not ultimately real, but are due to superimposition. It is through ignorance that pure consciousness appears to have become God and the universe. Through ignorance, again, the same pure consciousness appears to have become a human being having a body. The superimpositions are all illusory. Their substratum or underlying basis alone is real. It is pure consciousness alone that is the substratum of both God and the human being. When the false superimpositions are eliminated through the Vedantic discipline of negation, one realizes by direct experience that the ultimate reality is pure consciousness and neither God nor human being. There's a particular method which Vedanta philosophers use to obtain the implied meaning of a statement. How do they do it? It is by eliminating the conflicting aspects of the two major words and retaining the aspect that is common to both. To give an illustration, on seeing a man named Mr. X after a long time, his acquaintance exclaims, "This is that Mr. X." Now, obviously, the Mr. X seen a long time ago and at another place cannot be the one seen here and now, denoted by this. There is conflicting regarding both time and place, but still there is this undeniable fact of recognition. This is possible because the conflicting elements, that is, the time and place, are ignored and the attention is fixed on the man himself. Similarly, in interpreting the sentence, "that thou art," the seeker gives up the contradictory elements associated with that and thou, that is, the notions of creator and creature, and recognizes their oneness from the standpoint of absolute or pure consciousness, which is the essence of both. So, in classical Vedanta, after explaining the meaning of this great Vedic statement, the teacher encourages the seeker to meditate on his or her real essence. Now I quote a few verses from the Vivekachudamani. The Guru says, and this can also be used for meditation, "That which is beyond caste and creed, family and lineage, which is devoid of name and form, merit and demerit, that which transcends space and time and sense objects, that Brahman art thou. Meditate on this in thy mind. That which is free from birth, growth, maturity, decline, infirmity, and death, that which is indestructible, that which is the cause of the projection, maintenance, and dissolution of the universe, that Brahman art thou. Meditate on this in thy mind. That which is free from duality, that which is infinite, supreme, eternal, and undying, that which is stainless, that Brahman art thou. Meditate on this in thy mind. That beyond which there is nothing, which shines above Maya and is infinitely greater than the universe, the inmost self of all, the one without a second, existence, awareness, bliss, absolute, infinite, and immutable. That Brahman art thou. Meditate on this in thy mind. Hearing these lofty words of the teacher, the seeker reflects on their meaning. As one realizes through reflection and reasoning that the teacher's words are true, one meditates on Brahman with single-minded devotion. In this way, one gradually rids oneself of all superimpositions due to which one had identified oneself with transitory things and clung to notions of I and mine. One stops paying undue attention to the physical body, purifies oneself by constant contemplation, and discovers the pure self which lay covered by the impurities of endless desires. The more one's mind is established in the self, the less it is attracted by or attached to the outside world. And when all desires have been totally eliminated, there takes place the uninterrupted vision of the self. But this discipline of negation must be practiced ceaselessly as long as even a shadowy perception of the phenomenal universe or the finite soul remains. As long as identification with the body is not completely wiped out. Neither attachment to the world outside nor identification with the ego within should be given the slightest chance to make one forget the real nature of one's true self. It must never be forgotten that it is the ego, the illusory, false ego, that aggravates desires and brings the self back again and again to the world of ignorance. So, this is how the seeker learns the precise meaning of the statement, that thou art. Rejecting the attributes wrongly superimposed on that and thou, one understands that the statement refers to the absolute oneness of the individual self and the supreme self, experienced on the plane of pure consciousness. As one meditates on one's oneness with Brahman, there arises in the mind a state, a wave, which makes one feel that one is the self-luminous Brahman. This mental state is illumined by the reflection of pure consciousness, and it gradually destroys one's ignorance and doubts regarding Brahman. But even now, Brahman is only a state or wave in the mind. When the ignorance is destroyed, its effects, that is to say, the various mental states, are also destroyed. Just as when a piece of cloth is burnt, its warp and woof are also burnt. So the mental state colored by Brahman, so to say, which forms part of those effects, is also destroyed. When this last mental state is destroyed, there remains only the pure consciousness reflected in that state. Vedanta philosophers say this tiny bit of consciousness, being unable to illumine the supreme self-luminous Brahman, becomes overpowered by it. It is a figure of speech, obviously, because they are talking about a state that is beyond thought and words. And on the destruction of this final mental state, it reverts back to Brahman. It is like the image of a face in a mirror reverting to the face itself when the mirror is taken away, or like the reflection of the sun in a dish of water reverting to the sun when the dish is removed. So, in brief, when meditation deepens, the mind, which is an effect of ignorance, and so a form of matter, is also destroyed. And in the absence of the reflecting medium, the Brahman that was reflected in the mind is absorbed into the Supreme Brahman, which now shines alone. In this way, the subject and the object, pure consciousness and the perceiving or individualized consciousness, become one. When the duality is removed, there remains only the Supreme Brahman, the one without a second. This is how the knowledge of Brahman thoroughly destroys all the false superimpositions which accounted for the seeker's individuality. Realizing within oneself the infinite and eternal Brahman, which is ever pure, ever illumined, ever free, the seeker is liberated forever from ignorance, delusion, fear, grief, and death, and becomes the very embodiment of supreme bliss. This is the state where one says, I am Brahman, Aham Brahmasmi. That is why Ramana Maharshi said, it is not the jiva, it is not the person that says, I am Brahman. It is Brahman that says, I am Brahman. The teacher had said, that thou art, and now the seeker confirms it, I am Brahman. So this ultimate experience is utterly indescribable in words. It is known only to one who has experienced it. So the understanding of the precise meaning of that thou art is a transcendental experience felt on the spiritual plane. The meaning is lost if the seeker has the slightest attachment to material things like the body, senses, mind, or ego, or to the sensations associated with them. The knowledge, joy, and freedom which result from this mystical experience are entirely different from their counterparts on the relative plane of time, space, and causality. Realizing the absolute identity of that and thou, one knows the true meaning of spirituality. That is why Brahmanandaji said, spiritual life begins from Nirvikalpa Samadhi. So, realizing the absolute identity of that and thou, one knows the true meaning of spirituality, which is the realization of the eternal oneness of the eternal God and the eternal soul. Now, we come to something more practical. In order that the knowledge of Brahman may be realized directly and clearly, and not merely understood or appreciated intellectually, Vedanta prescribes certain disciplines known as hearing, reflection, meditation, and absorption in Brahman. Even samadhi is something to be practiced. Yes. Hearing means listening to the instructions of the teacher who explains the scriptures and from his or her own experience of the oneness of the Atman and Brahman. Reflection means thinking constantly of Brahman, thus taught, and strengthening one's conviction regarding its reality by means of suitable reasoning, manana. In this way, the seeker's wrong, contradictory notions regarding the self are removed. Meditation means the continuous dwelling of the mind on a stream of ideas identical with the conception of the non-dual Brahman, to the exclusion of all foreign ideas such as body, senses, mind, and ego. When meditation is practiced without break for a long time, with intense love for the ideal, and with unflagging determination for its realization, then it leads to absorption in Brahman. So this is the path laid down by Vedanta for seekers equipped with discrimination and detachment or renunciation. This is the path that leads to the realization of Brahman. Now we come to something even more practical. It means the seeker aspiring after self-realization must first of all be and with the power of detachment. Discernment between the real and the unreal. This comes from an intuitive and unshakable conviction of the mind that Brahman alone is the real substance and all other things are unreal and illusory. It is as if the seeker is born with this conviction because he or she must have been previously disillusioned by experiences of former lives about the reality of the happiness one may expect in this world of relativity. Discernment is the first and foremost discipline. Without it, the second one, renunciation, is not possible. Renunciation of the unreal. This is a total indifference or rejection of all enjoyment ranging from earthly pleasures to heavenly happiness. From scriptural teachings and from one's own personal observation, the intelligent seeker comes to know that no enjoyment can have an infinite duration. Worldly enjoyment is the direct result of our actions. But all actions are by nature finite, and so their results are also finite. Impermanent factors like the body and the other outer accessories that we employ in our actions, they can't produce a permanent result. So the seeker must have not only a keen power of intellect in order to discern between the real and the unreal, but also a stern power of the will to give up the unreal. Too often, the unreal appears to us in the guise of the real because we lack the power of discernment. And the pity of it is, too often we lack the power of will to renounce even what we know to be unreal. Anyhow, the unitive knowledge of the self is attained mainly with the help of discernment and renunciation. It is these that make it possible for the bound soul to achieve spiritual liberation. The glory of the true self, unobstructed by anything, is fully realized by the seeker when, through discernment, detachment, self-control, concentration, and meditation. 5 things: discernment, detachment, self-control, concentration, and meditation. Through these, when one no longer identifies oneself with any product of Maya, but is completely absorbed in the self. Untouched by Maya, the self is the only pure, changeless reality. This self-knowledge enables the seeker to break out of the limitations of relativity and attain supreme blessedness. And this knowledge is accompanied by realization. The Upanishad says, the knower of Brahman becomes Brahman. The illusion of name and form is destroyed, and the knower is no longer a victim of false hopes and fears that trouble an unillumined person at every step of their lives. For the knower of truth, the seer, the seen, and seeing all merge in the indescribable experience of the Absolute. Awareness of time and space is obliterated, and the bonds of causality are broken forever. The soul illumined by the realization of Brahman enters the realm of pure consciousness. The mind vanishes. All activities associated with the ideas of agency, means, and result, everything comes to a stop. And emerging from the experience of samadhi, and still inebriated with the bliss of Brahman, the illumined soul cries out in amazement. Now, I again quote a few verses from the Vivekachudamani. We can close our eyes and try to meditate on the words as we listen to them. And we still have, say, 15 minutes. We will meditate with our eyes closed until 12 o'clock, and then we can have the closing song. Emerging from the experience of samadhi and still inebriated with the bliss of Brahman, the illumined soul cries out in amazement, "Blessed am I! I have attained the consummation of life. I am the self-effulgent Atman, the perfect, matchless, immortal self, free from the trammels of samsara, beyond all sin and sorrow. I am indeed the actionless Atman, the unattached and unaffected witness of the illusion of duality. In the ocean of reality filled with the nectar of bliss, I exist as consciousness. I am the non-dual Brahman, infinite and eternal, formless and changeless, without beginning and end, omnipresent and all-pervading. I am indeed the transcendent Brahman, the support and light of everything, in whom the cosmos appears as a mere shadow. I am the soul of the universe. I am the all, the one without a second. I am existence, awareness, bliss, absolute." Thank you.